You want to know when everything changed? It wasn't the night he hit me. It was the silence that followed. Silence is the oldest weapon of control, sharper than any knife, colder than any truth. I remember the clink of the fork against the porcelain plate, Thanksgiving dinner, candles trembling in their glass cages, my daughter's laughter, rehearsed, metallic, my son-in-law's smile, the kind you'd find on a man who'd just buried his conscience in the backyard. And me? Sitting there with a bruise under my eye, painted in yellow and purple, like a medal from a war no one else saw. The world doesn't end in fire or flood. It ends when the people you love look at you and see a thing to control. That's how empires die. Not on battlefields, but around dinner tables. Every civilization begins with family, and every tyranny does too. When I sat down, I saw their glances. The guests pretended not to notice the mark on my face. They smiled the way people do when they smell something burning but tell themselves, it's only the oven. Gertrude, my daughter, lifted her wine glass. Dad got a little lesson, she said, her voice bright as broken glass. And Marvin, her husband, laughed. The sound was slow, heavy, practiced, power disguised as humor. I didn't answer. You learn after a while that words only feed predators. So I sat, and I watched. The candlelight flickered across Marvin's face, carving shadows where his humanity used to be. And in that glow, something in me woke. Not rage, not grief, but a kind of ancient clarity. They thought they'd silence me. But silence, when it hardens, becomes strategy. And that night, as the room filled with laughter and lies, I realized what men like me are truly built for. Not survival, but reckoning. The candlelight trembled like a secret trying to escape. The house smelled of roasted turkey and deceit. My daughter had set the table beautifully. Gold napkin rings, polished silverware, crystal glasses that caught the light like traps. Everyone had a role to play. Hers was the dutiful daughter. His, the successful husband. Mine? The silent old man with the bruise no one wanted to acknowledge. The bruise was still purple, spreading beneath my eye like ink on old paper. I didn't bother to hide it. Let them see what they had done. The wound wasn't just on my skin. It was a mark of everything they'd taken: respect, voice, dignity. Marvin, my son-in-law, carved the turkey as if he were dissecting the past. Each slice was a statement. He smiled without looking at me, his eyes glittering in the candlelight. Cold, confident, predatory. Across the table, my daughter laughed too loudly at something he said. That laugh, it wasn't hers anymore. It was an echo of him. When a person lives long enough under control, they start speaking in their captor's tone. I recognized it instantly because I'd seen it in men during my years as a firefighter. The look of someone who'd been consumed by someone stronger, someone darker. The guests made polite conversation, the kind that floats on the surface to avoid sinking into truth. "How's retirement, Wilbert?" one asked. My daughter interrupted before I could answer. "Dad's been struggling a little," she said sweetly. "Marvin's been helping him manage things. He forgets a lot these days." I smiled. That's when I realized they weren't just stealing from me, they were erasing me. I lifted my water glass, hands steady as a surgeon's. "Forgetting things?" I said softly. "No, some things I remember perfectly." Marvin looked up, that smirk flickering, uncertain now. I reached into my jacket pocket. The black envelope was heavier than it looked. "You'll want to see this," I said, and placed it on the table. My daughter's hand froze halfway to her glass. The guests glanced between us, the air thick enough to choke on. She opened it, slowly, as if the paper itself might burn her. Inside was the check she thought was gone, the one Marvin had Ken cashed and hidden. But there was more. Behind it were printed copies of documents, her handwriting, his signature. Their plan to declare me legally incompetent, to take my home, my accounts, my name. Her face drained of color. Marvin stopped breathing for half a second. The kind of pause a predator makes when it realizes the prey has teeth. "I was a firefighter for 35 years, I said. "I've seen structures collapse because someone thought the foundation didn't matter. You built your plan on a lie." My voice was low, calm, dangerous. The kind of calm that comes before everything burns. "You thought I'd never see. But I've been watching, listening, waiting." No one spoke. Even the house seemed to hold its breath. My daughter's lips trembled, forming words that couldn't find air. Marvin reached for the documents, but I pulled them back. "You know," I said quietly, "when you hit me, I thought you were teaching me fear. Turns out you were teaching me strategy." I stood. Every sound in the room sharpened. The crackle of candle wicks, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of a clock that suddenly felt like a countdown. I sent copies to my lawyer, to the police, to your employer, Marvin. You won't find a way out this time. My hand brushed the bruise. You gave me this, I said. Now I'm giving you something too, consequences. The silence that followed wasn't peace, it was realization, the kind that rearranges everything inside a man. Marvin's smirk dissolved. Gertrude's eyes filled not with guilt but with understanding, the slow, cold recognition that she had destroyed the only person who would have forgiven her. I left them there, the candles still burning, the food untouched, the air thick with the ruin of their own making. Outside, the night was cold and clear. I walked to the end of the driveway, feeling the air bite my skin, feeling alive for the first time in years. The bruise under my eye throbbed once, then faded into nothing. Men like me don't seek revenge. We restore balance. We remind the world that even after everything burns, truth still stands, silent, steady, and waiting for those who thought they'd buried it. The night outside was colder than it should have been. The desert air carried no sound, just the kind of silence that follows an explosion. I walked to the end of the street without looking back at the house. In every window, candles still burned, but they looked like little alarms now, each flame a reminder of what had been exposed. The weight that had lived on my chest for weeks was gone. What replaced it was not relief. It was clarity. I sat on the low stone wall by the neighbor's fence and breathed in the dark. When you spend your life saving people from fire, you start to understand what it means to burn. Heat cleanses, but it also reveals the weak spots, the corners built without care. Families are like that. Pressure makes the cracks show. Tonight had only made the structure visible. Somewhere inside that house, Marvin would be shouting. My daughter would be crying, or pretending to. Maybe both. The guests would already be gone, whispering in their car about what they'd seen, promising never to mention it again. Secrets don't survive daylight, but they leave shadows long after the truth comes out. I closed my eyes and pictured the look on Marvin's face, the exact second he realized the game was over. There was a satisfaction in that image, but it wasn't revenge, it was restoration. For the first time in years, I wasn't someone's burden. I was the lesson. A car passed, headlights brushing across my bruised face. In the glare, I caught my reflection in the window of a parked van. The mark under my eye had started to fade, but another kind of mark had taken its place, harder, quieter, carved somewhere beneath the skin. The kind that never heals because it shouldn't. The kind that keeps a man awake when the world sleeps. I stood, straightened my coat, and turned back Toa. R&D the house. The flames in the windows flickered lower, weaker, like the final moments of a story that had burned too hot. I didn't need to go back inside. The truth was already doing what fire always does, consuming the lies that tried to hide it. By dawn, the street was quiet again. The frost on the grass shimmered under a pale orange sky. From my porch, I could still see the faint reflection of flashing lights down the block. Police cars, maybe, or just the ghosts of last night's truth refusing to fade. I'd been awake all night. There was no need for sleep. Peace doesn't tire you, it fills you. My hands trembled as I poured coffee, not from fear, but from release. For the first time in years, the house felt mine again. Not just in the papers, but in spirit. The walls didn't echo with silence anymore. They breathed. A knock came around 8. Officer Daniels, young, polite, unsure. He had questions about Marvin. I told him the truth simply, the same way I'd lived, directly, without drama. He nodded slowly as he pieced it together. When he left, I noticed he didn't look at the bruise. Maybe he understood that some marks are self-explanatory. I sat in my favorite chair by the window, the one my late wife used to sit in when she knitted during storms. The morning sun broke through, landing gently across the old wood floors. It felt like a hand on my shoulder. Not forgiveness exactly. Something steadier, a reminder that even when everything's taken from you, your money, your pride, your voice, if you still have truth, you still have power. Across the street, the neighbors pretended not to stare. They'd seen the commotion. They'd whisper, of course. Small towns always do. But let them talk. Sometimes stories are the only justice left. I reached for the framed photo on the mantel, my daughter at 12, all sunlight and wild hair, before the world taught her to lie. I didn't hate her. You can't hate what you mourn. You just learn to stop expecting it to come back. Outside, the police cars began to leave, one by one. The sound of tires on wet pavement was soft, almost respectful. I sipped my coffee and watched as the last cruiser turned the corner. Then I whispered, to no one in particular, "Balance restored." The bruise under my eye had faded to yellow, a ghost of what was. But somewhere deep inside, a flame burned steady, clean, and bright. Not vengeance, not pride, just truth, finally free.